even though it'll be very similar in content to the one I had this morning. But sometimes people ask different questions. In fact, anyway, so the first thing I want to do is just walk you through some features, I guess I would call them, of the class that people often miss. And so people will like be 2/3 of the way through the class and be like, I didn't know that was available to us. So I want to make sure you know where some of the stuff is. The first, of course, is to check the announcements. You probably noticed already I'm a heavy announcement poster. I post at least one a week and usually more. But as we get further into the course and you become more comfortable with the course, there'll be less need for me to say, hey, don't freak out about this, or don't worry about this. And so, but at least once a week, I'll post like a general announcement telling you everything that's expected in the upcoming week, plus some additional information. The homework support that you were signing up for today, just to explain that a little bit more, what you're signing up for in the homework support is that twice during the semester you're going to be expected to work out one of the homework problems for your fellow students. And so you record it. A lot of people use screen capture technology and just work it out right there in Wiley Plus. That's totally fine. Some people create Excel sheets that kind of look really nice, but not everybody has Excel skills, so it's okay. You can do what you want. Some people don't feel comfortable with screen capture, so they'll have someone use their cell phone and just film them working out the problem on a whiteboard. I mean, all of those are acceptable. I'm not grading your presentation skills. Honestly, if you put in a reasonable effort, you just create a video that shows how to work out the problem, you're going to get full points for it. So what I found is people hate it, and it really is one of the most valuable things they do. It really forces you to dig into that problem if you're going to teach it to other people. So, and that's part of the BYU Idaho mission, is to teach one another. And it's a challenge in online classes. Also, let me preface everything I'm saying with, if you have a question along the way, do not be afraid to just interrupt me. Honestly, I won't get offended. And Zoom just doesn't work very well. You know what I mean? You just have to kind of talk over each other. There's no polite way. You can also, some people aren't comfortable. I'm bringing it up right now. Some people don't feel comfortable just interrupting because they've been taught that was rude, and they're nice people. And so you can also just throw it in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on the chat and address any questions you put in the chat as well. All right. So our weekly announcements. Am I sharing my screen with you? That would help.
Well, now you are.
Now I am. Okay. Great. Oh, hey, Jeff. How you doing? I didn't see you sneak in there. I was just talking away. Anyway, so our weekly announcements. Let's see. Always kind of follow the same format because I'm not creative, I think. This tells you what work is due this week. And then down in this other news section, there's always a few items. This one is additional study content. So I've put together a Google Doc that has just a bunch of links to other study tools, but I'll show that to you in a minute and show you another way of finding it as well, that a lot of people find useful. Information on the class meeting, and then sometimes just other information, or I'll do a little intro video, a couple minutes. So that's in there. That's what's in that weekly announcement. So I wanted to show you this tool. So I'm going to go to the course modules. And for some reason, the course designers put way at the bottom under all of the modules, so you got to scroll all the way down, something called student resources. And students always miss them because they're way at the bottom of the modules. And so not only do we have the stuff that the course designers put there, so an academic support center, Wiley Plus support, even like when you go to do your homework support video, this shows you how to embed a video in a discussion post if you don't know how. That's all in here at the bottom of the modules. But I'll also add things from the semester, like the class meeting schedule that I posted in the announcements. Sometimes they get buried in the announcements, so I have a link to it here. If you forget, you could come and click on it here, and it would show you, is today the day that it meets at 10 a.m. or the day it meets at 6 p.m. That's there. And then also this additional study content, which is that document I was telling you I put together. And what that has is, for each chapter, there's a lecture of me. I'm lecturing on similar content. I'll be honest with you, I didn't create this special for BYU Idaho. I teach this class at another college, and I just took the lecture content that matches up and added that. Some people like it and think it's valuable. Some people don't. Again, you don't have to use it. This is here for your use if you want it. These self-tests, a lot of people really like them. They come from the textbook publisher Wiley, and they feel a lot like the questions you'll see on the exams. So for whatever reason, when they designed the course, they made the homework assignments and the exam questions feel different. I don't know if that makes sense. It's the same content, but there's just a different feel. The homework assignments feel more like example-based, and then the exam questions are more like multiple choice based on the accounting principles. So these self-tests, I recommend them because they give you a sense or a feel for what the exam questions will feel like, and they're good practice. And then I'll work. Oh, did somebody have a question? Okay. There's occasionally me working out like a B version of some of the problems that's worth checking out if you're stuck on it. But there's also video available within the problem as well, or within the Wiley Plus. And then a quick review, usually like a 5 to 7 minute of me reviewing the topics of the chapter. So that's all there in the additional study content. Again, you can access that either by the link in the weekly announcements. There's always a link to this there, or the link at the very bottom of the modules, whoops, where it says student resources. So that's, again, all the way down here. Just again, I always hear people saying, I didn't know that tool was there for us. Well, there it is. All right. The article assignment that you have this week. Sometimes people think they have to write a paper this week and they're feeling overwhelmed because it's a new class, they've got all this stuff. You do not have to write a paper, okay? All you have to submit for this week is a citation for an article that you will be writing a paper on, a very short paper, just to let you know too, later in the course. And so, and then if you click here, so I'm in the paper article, it will sort of give you the specifics about that. And that is that it has to be from a professional journal, so it can't be from like a newspaper or like Time magazine, a periodical or anything like that. It has to be from a professional journal. They give you a link to the McKay Library's eJournal Finder. You can also find them at other sources, but that's one place they give you to find them. And then the other thing you have to know about it is that it has to be from the most recent 10 years. So if you submit a citation from a journal that you're going to write about and it's 20 years old, I'll send it back to you and say it's got to be within the last 10 years. So that's just trying to save both of us. You'll be aggravated if you found one and then I reject it. And I'm not doing it to be mean, I'm just trying to follow the assignment instructions. So that's the article assignment that you'll see this week. All you have to do is find a citation for the journal. You don't have to write the paper. In essence, it's you saying, I intend to write on this journal, and then I'll reply to you in the comments saying, yeah, this one looks good, or no, it's more than 10 years old, or no, that's not a professional journal, in essence. Okay, extra credit. So I'm super limited by our accounting department on the amount of extra credit I'm allowed to offer. I'm only allowed
Brother Fox,
Yes.
quick question about this paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying that we choose it on a topic that interests us, our intended occupation or major.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty wide open.
It is wide open. So it does not have to be about accounting. Probably 5 people out of 50 in this class actually intend to pursue accounting as a job. And so, but when you're a business major or an entrepreneurship major or 10 other majors, you still have to take accounting. So it is wide open. And so that's part of the reason why I'm not an English teacher. I'm not grading these things hard. It's pretty much if you follow the instructions, which are like tell what article, give a synopsis of it, why you chose it, and what you learned from it, you get full credit. Like it's not, I would not invest a ton of time into this if I were you. I would find an article that like legitimately interests you about the career field that you either work in now or intend to work in the future, but it shouldn't kill you. It's like a 1 to 2 page paper, so it should be very brief.
Okay, that works.
It's actually like easy points compared to some of the accounting stuff. Like,
Yes, I've taken enough cash flow and other classes, CAPSM, and accounting is my brain was not wired for it. So I am grateful to people like yourself whose brain is wired for it. Mine does not seem to be. I'm hoping to rewire this semester, at least some.
Well, there's some classes where you're like, man, that class really reached me, and others where you're like, I'm glad that's done, and I'll just move on. I checked the box and I'm done, and that's okay. Anyway, so extra credit, we're only allowed to offer up to 1% extra credit. So that's the max I'm allowed to offer. So what I've created as extra credit for this course, and you may have already seen it in week 2, is every odd week I'll introduce another extra credit, which is a spiritual discussion on some that's related to what we're discussing in the course. Believe it or not, even accounting, we can find that we can find the Lord in all things, and really, it's not required. A lot of people like to participate in it, even if we weren't giving extra credit. The discussions are usually pretty interesting, and so you can find that on the bottom of each each weekly module. There's a link to the discussion board. This week's called Spiritual Book of Life. And what will happen is if you participate in it, I'll give you 10 points, and then at the end of the semester, if you participated in all of them, your grade will go up by 1%. If you participated in half of them, then your grade will go up by 0.5%. And so sometimes that 1% is enough to move somebody from a C+ to a B- or something like that. And so anyway, that's just there for you if you want to do it. One last thing. This week we have this proctored exam practice. First of all, recognize it's not an exam. Okay, so it's not going to impact your grade the way an exam does. It's really just an opportunity to make sure Proctorio, which is our exam software, is working correctly on your computer, so there's no surprises when you get to the real exam coming up in the future here. So here's one clue that if you try to do the proctored practice and it what's the word? It prompts you for a password or for a passcode to the exam, that means that Proctorio is not set up correctly, because our Proctorio and Canvas talk together, and the password is already embedded in there. So when you click on the exam link, you should be able to go right into the exam in Proctorio. So if it's saying you need to put in a password or a passcode, I forget the term it uses, usually the easiest fix for that is, number 1, make sure you're on Chrome, and make sure 2, you have the Proctorio plugin installed in Chrome. If you are on Chrome and you think you have it, then a lot of times just reinstalling the plugin, that fixes the whole problem. Otherwise, I can give you an 800 number. In fact, I'll post it later before we get to probably tonight, actually, where you can reach Proctorio support if you do have problems. A lot of times these third-party softwares, if they have issues, students of course will reach out to the instructor, and I'm kind of powerless. I can't fix them. I don't have any sort of back door into their thing. And so all we can really do is contact support. The good news is Proctorio support has been super awesome. I can't say the same for Wiley all the time, but it is what it is. Some of you probably noticed as you try to look at the Wiley content that some of it is in Flash, Adobe Flash, and it doesn't play correctly. Adobe has stopped supporting Flash, and so Wiley's aware of that. I'm not sure why they didn't fix it before Flash went out, but that's the case. So there may be some times when you're trying to look at some of the material and you can't, and there's not much we can do about it. In fact, I'm pretty sure BYUI is looking at shifting to a different provider in the next year, but we're in the middle of it. So, all right. So there are all my, I don't know, basic issues or where to find stuff in the course. I'm sure other things will come up. Any questions before I move into a discussion of some of the content from this week? Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
I have a question.
man, Jeff, I thought I made it.
Close. There was a limit, and we were right next to it. As I was going through the chapter and studying the chapter and doing all the add-on videos, it appears that we have to really know all four of those forms, the financial forms, because it just gave us blank. We have blank cells, and there's some of them have drop-down menus, and some of them did not. Are we going to have those everything memorized for those financial forms for our exams?
So okay, first of all, recognize that the exams, like I said, they're not the same. So it's not filling in drop downs or things like that. It's more like multiple choice, where it's going to say, you know, if your assets were this much and your liabilities were this much, well, then how much was your stockholders' equity? And it'll give you 4 choices. So what I'm trying to say is, you do have to, the way these exams are in this course, you do kind of have to know everything forward and backward. They are challenging exams, but it's not memorizing it in the same way. And that's kind of a consistent complaint I get semester after semester, and I'm kind of powerless to fix, is how the exams feel different than the homework. So you kind of prepare based on the homework, and then you take the exam, and it's like, oh, it looks different, even though it's the same material. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. People get A's, people pass every semester. So the short answer is, you have to be very familiar with them. I don't know that you have to memorize them so that you could, say, complete, you know, that homework where you're filling in a balance sheet, you know, from memory. But you do have to know that assets come first and liabilities, and then stockholders' equity. Know which type of accounts fall into the assets section and the liability section and stockholders' equity section, and so forth. I don't know if I really answered your question directly, but
Yeah, I think it does. There's I've been told in the past that the and I believe the syllabus mentioned this, that we are allowed a page with formulas on it and such for the exam. But I've also seen where people said that was no longer allowed. What are we allowed on the exam? This is proctorio, so I mean it's going to be monitored.
right. So if the syllabus says you're allowed notes, it's not right. So the exams are completely closed book. In lessons, you're allowed a calculator, scratch paper, and that's it. And you can use Excel as long as it's on the same computer as your exam.
And would that be a blank Excel sheet or?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And 4-function calculator, scientific calculator acceptable?
Yeah, I don't care what kind of calculator you use, and I don't think anybody will know. I mean, I'm not trying to say cheat, but I don't think it's cheating as long as you haven't, you know, programmed answers into it. So I'm not worried about if you use a scientific.
Okay.
It would seem crazy if someone has a scientific calculator, they have to go out and purchase a cheaper 4-function. Anyway, although you could probably get a 4-function calculator for a couple bucks, but for some people, a couple bucks is.
I think it cost me $1.50 plus tax.
Okay.
Okay, sweet. Those are all my questions.
Okay. So I am now going to talk a little bit. Whoops, I think I opened the wrong thing here. Give me a second longer. Let's see. I'm going to give you like a brief little overview. And I guess if you've read through, you've already read through some of this. So hopefully my explanations help a little bit and make it and is valuable to you. sorry, I have two screens, and so I have you guys, your pictures up over here, so each time I talk to you, I look away from you, which is weird, but welcome to Zoom. This statement, or this chapter, focuses on the financial statements and the fundamental accounting equation. And so the first statement is the income statement. An income statement is a summary of the revenues, or the money brought into the business through the sales of goods and services, and the expenses, the money that the business pays to operate. And the net income is the revenue minus the expenses. That's our net income. If our expenses were to be greater than our revenue, then we would call that a net loss, right? If our expenses added up to be more than what we brought in. This is an important statement for a business owner because it summarizes whether or not you're making money, right? If your expenses are greater than your revenues, you can't do that for very long, and you'll go out of business. You'll notice up at the top, it says for the month ended October 31st, 2017. So income statements always measure revenues, again, that's money coming in, and expenses, money going out, over a period of time. So for a month, for a quarter, for a year, are the most common, and not like the amount of money you have at any given moment in time. Recognize it's measuring it over a period of time. So that's an income statement. And then, let's see, the income statement, after the income statement is what's called a retained earnings statement. So the retained earnings are the money that the business retains, keeps. So when a business makes money in the form of net income, its options are either to pay that money out to the owners, because they've already paid their expenses, right? Revenue is what they've earned, expenses is what they paid out. So this is the difference. This is money they've made. Sometimes it's called net profit or just profit. So when a business makes a profit or a net income, they can either keep that, retain it in the business, or pay it out to the owners in the form of what's called a dividend. So the statement of retained earnings summarizes that activity for the period. It has the retained earnings at the beginning of in this case, the period is October 2017. So this is a new business, started with 0 retained earnings. You add in any net income, and then you subtract out any dividends, which is, again, dividends just means money's paid out to the owners, and you're left with retained earnings at the end of the period. You'll notice that the net income from the income statement flows into the net income line on the statement of retained earnings. So this is kind of like saying, what did my business have at the beginning of the period? What did I make in net income? What did I pay out in dividends? And here's what's left. That's the retained earnings at the end of the period. Again, if you have questions, don't be afraid to jump in.
I have a question really quick.
Yeah.
Do you think that throughout like our homework and exams, will we come across like a net loss instead of?
Absolutely.
So we will. Okay, because I noticed, I mean, I've only done one of the homework assignments, but there was no negative balance on any of it yet. So I was.
Yeah, it'll come up.
We will see that.
It's pretty normal for businesses to run at a loss sometimes, you know, and a business can survive by making a loss as long as they have sufficient cash to cover that loss. You know, a lot of tech companies will lose money for the first several years. They just keep bringing in money through investors until they can start to turn a profit. That's not that unusual. So this is just kind of the same stuff I said about the statement of retained earnings. I don't want to read it to you and insult your intelligence in that way. But so anyway, so there's the statement of retained earnings. And the next is called a balance sheet. So a balance sheet summarizes an entity's assets, their liabilities, and their stockholders' equity. Assets are things that a business owns, like cash or supplies or equipment, things like that. Liabilities are debts the business owes, has to pay others. And then stockholders' equity is the amount of the business that belongs to the owners. If you think about it, if you think about like a home, you have the asset of the home is worth a certain amount. Let's say it's worth $100,000. And then your liability would be the mortgage you have with the bank. Let's say you owe $70,000 to the bank. So the equity would be the amount of the home that's actually yours, the 100,000 what the house is worth, minus the 70,000 that belongs to the bank. The 30,000 is your equity, or the amount of the home that's yours. So that's what's summarized on a balance sheet. Just to go over a few of these types of accounts. Accounts receivable is an asset account. That means it's money owed to you by customers. So when I sell something to a customer and I say, hey, take 30 days to pay me, that creates an account receivable, money owed to me by a customer or sometimes other people. Prepaids, this is when we pay for something like insurance a year ahead of time. It's pretty normal to pay for a year's worth of insurance. And so even though we haven't had the insurance actually insure us yet, we've already paid for it. And so we record that as an asset. Okay. Liabilities is money owed to us. Money that we owe others. So notes payable. This is usually a formal loan where we've signed a paper agreeing to pay a certain amount of interest for a certain amount of time to pay that money back. Whereas accounts payable is usually informal. When one of our suppliers sells us something and says, hey, take 30 days or 60 days to pay me, that's what an account payable is. And then this other liability right here, unearned service revenue, that's a weird sounding one because it has revenue in the name and people think of it as revenue. But unearned revenue occurs when somebody pays you in advance. So for example, I own a storage rental business, like mini storage, and people will pay me for a year and I'll collect that rent, but then I haven't actually let them use the space yet, right? It's because that's going to be coming up in the future. And so I record it as a liability called unearned revenue to recognize I owe them that service for the next year, or if I don't deliver that service, then I'm going to owe them their money back. So unearned revenue just arises when people pay you in advance for services you've not yet provided or goods you've not yet delivered.
Question on that. Both prepaid insurance and the unearned service revenue are both either I've paid the money or I've accepted the money in advance. When we're recording this, like the $550 for the insurance or the $800 here for the unearned, are we recording 1/12 of what we received, or are we recording the entire amount? Or
yeah, so it's a great question, and you notice something important. These are two sides of the same coin, a prepaid and an unearned. Okay, so the prepaid is when I'm the person who's paid the money, I've prepaid it, that creates an asset or a claim of future benefit from that money I've paid. And I'm going to go ahead and record the full amount that I paid. And then later we'll get to how each month we're going to recognize a portion of that as our insurance expense and reduce the amount of the asset as we use it up. The other side of that coin is the unearned revenue side, where I've received money in advance that I haven't yet earned. And so I'm going to record the whole amount I receive as a liability. And then each month as I earn a portion of it, I'll record that as a revenue and decrease the amount of liability I have until I catch up, so to speak, to what was paid. So yeah, so that was a good thing to notice. So under stockholders' equity, you'll notice there's two types. There's common stock, and common stock represents any monies paid into the business by the owners. So when I started my storage business, my mother and I became partners. We each put $40,000 into the business checking account, and that created a common stock of $80,000 in the business. That was money. Sometimes it'll be called partner contributions or owner contributions as well. But common stock is what it's called in a corporation. That's money put into the business by the owners. Then the other is retained earnings. And we talked about what retained earnings is. That's any net income the business has earned minus any amount that we've paid back to the owners in dividends. So the stockholders' equity is always made up of what's been contributed by the owners plus any amount the business has earned. And then you'll notice that it balances. The total assets always equal the total of liabilities and stockholders' equity. If they don't balance, it means you have an error somewhere, and you'll need to go and figure out where that error is. People always think it's called a balance sheet because these two things balance with each other, which I guess it could be, but it's really called a balance sheet because it shows the balances of each of the asset, liability, and equity accounts as of a given date. So you'll notice like how the income statement was for the month ended October 31st. So from October 1st to October 31st, we were measuring revenue minus expenses. But the balance sheet is as of a given day. So what we're saying is as of October 31st, we have this much in each account. These are the balances of each account. So that's a balance sheet. And you'll notice the retained earnings from the retained earnings statement flows into the balance sheet in the stockholders' equity section.
I have two questions.
Okay.
Where would investors be found on a balance sheet? Would that be in notes payable because it's like a formal loan, or
So
how does that work?
Yeah, good question. So when somebody invests in my business, they become an owner of my business.
Okay, so common stock.
That'd be under common stock.
Okay.
Whereas if they lent us money, then that would be a liability. You
Okay.
think about the two ways to fund your business. One is a note, a loan, and you have to pay it back with interest. The other is equity, where you sell a portion of the business to somebody.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense. And the other question I had on the homework, there was a part where we had to put all the assets in order of like how liquid they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if there's an order like that for liabilities. Like, how do we, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
so,
it makes sense to me that cash goes first because that's like in your hand cash, right?
Right.
And so that kind of stuff made sense, but I wasn't sure like if there's a rule or like an order for liabilities.
Right. So sort of. And as we get deeper into the course, we'll do what's called a classified balance sheet, which will separate out current liabilities, those due within the next year, and long-term liabilities, those due in more than a year. And so you separate them out that way. I guess that's reverse liquidity, so to speak. I mean, you have the ones that you have to pay the soonest. Usually you will see accounts payable be the first liability. And that's not because of a rule anybody made, but because that's just how everybody does it. But there's not...
Even though this one says notes payable first?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Oh.
I don't know why in their example they put notes payable first, because you almost never see that in real life.
So accounts payable, because you could get that. Wait.
Because that you're going to have to pay off usually. Usually accounts payable are due within 30 to 60 days.
Right. Like you're paying people, like suppliers. Is that like a good example? Okay. Versus like paying a loan.
Right. So typically liabilities are listed in order of the shortest term
due
to the
date.
longest. Yes, the soonest due date to the longest. So you would see accounts payable and even unearned revenue, right? That's usually people don't pay in advance more than a year. And so that's stuff you expect you're going to have to pay off by earning that revenue within the next year. So I'm not sure why this example did that. I think it was, maybe I'll call the textbook and yell at them or something. I don't know.
No, that's not necessary.
Use Jessica, you jerks. Something like that. All right. Let's see. Welcome, Derek. I never said hi to you when you came in. I think I was in the middle of talking, and Gloria as well. Welcome. So just a few more points on the balance sheet here. It is the financial statement representation of the fundamental or basic accounting equation of assets equal liabilities plus stockholder equity. And it's laid out there with assets, liabilities, stockholder equity, and it shows how they equal each other. And they're always in this order: assets first, then liabilities, stockholder equities. Sometimes you'll see one that have like assets on the left and liabilities and stockholder equity on the right. But very similar, like you'll see one and pretty soon you'll get comfortable recognizing a balance sheet pretty easy. All right. So the last statement is the statement of cash flows. And though the statement of cash flows seems very, I guess, obvious, it's actually probably the most difficult one to create. And so it won't be until way later in the course, after we've got our feet under us fully, before we attempt statements of cash flows. So for now, they just want you to, they may have you create one by filling it in, but they're not going to have you go through all the math of figuring out what each section is. Here's what's a little bit hard about the way it is in this course, or in this chapter, is people are just like, I have not really figured out yet what the difference between an operating activity, an investing activity, and a financing activity is, and yet they kind of expect me to know that. So here's the rule: an operating activity are those activities that a business does to run its day-to-day operations. Most often that means money you've received from customers for selling goods and services, and money you've paid out to suppliers for the stuff that you're selling, and then other operating expenses, your wages and salaries for employees. Those are all of the operating activities, the cash it takes to run the business and the cash that you made by running the business. Okay, so that is separate from investing activities, which would be cash that I spend to buy large assets like building, equipment, vehicles, assets that are going to last a long period of time. So the only thing that goes in investing activities is the purchase of long-term assets, such as building, land, equipment, or the sale of those. The purchase of supplies or the purchase of inventory, that all is part of operating. So just think of operating as day-to-day stuff, whereas investing is like big ticket items, things that you wouldn't do day-to-day. And then financing activities are those activities that I bring in money either through investors purchasing stock or through borrowing, through loans, or if I pay cash out, like in the form of dividends to the stockholders. So both investing and financing are kind of like these big ticket items, things you don't do every day, whereas operating activities are all the things you do on a day-to-day basis to run a business. And in essence, you can see why it's valuable to see how much cash I brought in from that, how much I paid out from that, how much I brought in from financing, and at the end of the day, say, this is how much cash I now have. I've always said that the income statement and the balance sheet and the statement of retained earnings together are like they're like a cancer screening for your business. It helps you recognize areas that aren't healthy so that you can address them and save the business. But the statement of cash flows is more like the EKG. I mean, it helps you identify the things that are going to kill you immediately if you don't take care of them. Because if you run out of cash, you're kind of done, right? If you don't have stuff to sell to customers, because you don't have cash to buy it, you're in trouble. If you can't pay your employees, they might really like you, but they're probably not going to keep coming to work for no pay. Maybe for a week if you sweet talk them and say, I promise I'll pay you next week, but not much beyond that. I mean, I love my employer, but I'm still here because I'm getting paid. So cash flows just summarize where the cash came from and where it went. So that is a lot, actually. I mean, I told you it would only be 10 minutes, and I probably took closer to 20. I apologize. But this first chapter has a lot of new stuff. Anyway, so this is the point at which I would turn it over for questions from you about the things you read in the chapter and you had questions about, or if there's a homework problem that you had a question about, anything like that. And also, if you don't have questions, it's okay. Don't feel like you have to fill those, it's kind of like when someone's speaking in church and they look at the clock, and you're thinking, please don't just fill it in. If you're done, just bear your testimony and sit down, right? Sometimes people feel like they have to fill. Anyway.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of like the course
Sure.
stuff, I guess. So obviously we can use the book for homework, right? Especially if we have like a copy.
Mm-hmm.
And then can we use notes for our quizzes? Or yes. Okay. Yeah, so we can use notes for quizzes.
Quizzes, you can use book notes, whatever. The only thing that's closed book are the exams.
Okay. And then, so this is kind of more of a general question, but how would you describe the rest of the course? Is it building on this chapter and like getting in fine details, or is it completely different? I don't know what to expect. This is my first ever accounting class. So
that's a really great question, and probably something I should have emphasized. So the first 4 chapters of this course are foundational. And what I mean by that is, if you don't master that content, you're going to struggle with the rest of the course. And so you've really got to, hit these first 4 chapters hard. And then what it does, it drills down deeper into each of the different types of assets that you might deal with and types of liabilities that you might deal with, et cetera. But these first
Okay.
4 chapters are really fundamental.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Is the first exam just like the first 4 chapters?
Actually, the first exam is the first 2 chapters. And the reason they set it up that way is because it's so foundational. They want to like force people to have to study hard after 2, and then there's another exam after chapter 4 to reiterate all of the same foundational information.
So are the exams like this is for chapter 1 and 2, and then this is 3 and 4? It's not like cumulative, like every exam,
Okay,
or
so
it's just the final?
good question. So the first exam is chapters 1 and 2, and then the second exam is chapters 1 through 4. So it's
Okay.
But really the way they build on each other, it'll be a natural progression. But then the ones after that, they do not go back to chapters 1 through 4. It'll just be chapters, whatever it is, 5 through 7, or I'd have to look. But so it's just
Okay.
that just happens with the first 2, because again, it's really trying to hit that info hard and make sure you've learned those underlying principles.
Okay.
All right. Are we good? I mean, it's been 47 minutes. I know
Yeah.
you're probably sick of me, so I am very glad to go. Derek, where are you at, Derek?
I'm here up in Rexburg, Idaho.
Oh, you're at the mothership.
Yeah,
So it's super cold there.
it is. It is very sad.
Well, I'm wearing shorts right now, but it will be cold when I walk to my car. So, but I did wear a polo up top, so I'm good. Gloria, I don't know if you have a microphone. Where are you?
Yeah, I have microphone. I'm living in Payson, Utah.
Okay. Also cold.
And I have a question, brother.
Okay.
I stuck in exercise 1.9
Mm-hmm.
and Willy Plus. I know understand this. I need to put in my Zoom biggest in it.
It's like, is it brief exercise 1.9, Gloria, or exercise 1.9?
It's exercise 1.9. It's in the homework.
Okay, yeah. If you want, I can go over it with you and everybody else. You can be, if you want to hang out while I go through it and think it may be instructive to you, you can. But also, if you feel like, hey, I've got 1.9 down, you can take off as well. But do you want me to go over it, Gloria?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
I have another meeting at 7, but
Yeah.
thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, have a good night.
Yep.
Let's see. So it's chapter 1, part 1. Exercise 1.9. Okay. Unfortunately, when I bring it up on my end, it shows answers. Unfortunately for you, it's not the same answers as yours. They use different numbers each time. So that's a bummer. If it does match your numbers, awesome. So where are you stuck, or what can I help you with?
I'm stuck in the second part. It's impossible for me put a big my Zoom.
So the income statement here.
Yeah, I don't see it. One moment. I don't see it because my Zoom is so little right now. Okay. Biggest. Okay. Maximize. No. Yeah, it's the second part. It's the second and third. I don't understand. I don't know why, but I made the rest. I finished all of it, but is this the only 2 point I struggle? And I don't know how calculate.
Okay. So what they're doing here is they're giving you these numbers, and then they're asking you to figure out these amounts here, right? And so,
Yes.
So the first thing I do is I kind of try to look through the whole thing, and then sometimes.
Oh, but my homework looks different.
Okay, how is yours different?
It is 1.9 instead. I answered the A, but I no answer B and C. but not look like your
Are you sure we're not talking about brief exercise 1.9?
no, yeah, brief exercise. Yes,
Okay, like this?
yes.
Okay, yeah, so this one is a little bit different because what they're asking us to do is they give us the total assets and the total liabilities of this company. And so, and then they're going to talk about changes in assets or liabilities, and then we have to solve for them. So I'm actually going to just bring up an Excel spreadsheet because I don't really have a good pen option here. So for my company here, it says at the beginning of the year, we had total assets of $800,000
Yes.
and total liabilities of $510,000. Probably be better to do this in Excel, but we know that our assets, just a little bit,
Assets
equal,
in part A, but it's different. Yeah.
right, but our assets equal our liabilities plus our equity.
Yes.
Okay, so if our assets are 800,000
Mm-hmm.
and our was it liabilities that were 510,000? Yes. And our liabilities are 510,000. Then we should be able to calculate our equity at that time, right?
Yeah, because but I don't understand because during the year, total liabilities increase in my
Right. Well,
case.
I'm not
it's
there
one-
yet. I'm trying to
one-
set up let me set up the foundation of the problem, and then we'll be able to solve it really easy. But if we skip this step of solving for equity now, it'll be super confusing. So if my assets equal my liabilities plus my equity,
Yes.
to find my equity, all I have to do is subtract the liabilities from the assets.
Yes.
So 800,000 minus 510,000. Whoops. Messed that up. Hold on. So our liability or our equity at this point is going to be 290,000. All right. So now that I know these basic figures, now I can look at the first problem here. So it asks me, and you said you got A, right?
Yes. I got an A right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's try B then. So,
Yeah.
so first of all, it tells us to treat each item independently. So we're going to go back to this basic of 800,000 in assets, or whatever your numbers are, 510 in liabilities. So we're going to go back to that and discount anything we did for each section. So for A, we're going to go, after we're done calculating the equity for A, then we're going to go back to these numbers again, 800, 510, and 290. So in this year, our liabilities increased by $90,000. So now our liabilities will be 600,000. And our equity decreased by 60,000.
Mm-hmm.
So our equity will be 230,000. And now all we do is we use the same formula, assets equal liabilities plus equity, to solve for what our assets will be at that point. So if we know our new liability is 600 and our new equity is 230, then our assets will be 600 plus 230 or 830,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't need use the amount at the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Right. Well, we have to solve for the new amount because it's changed.
The new amount. Okay.
So we're left with assets equal the new liabilities plus the new equity.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then on the last one, I'll go back to, again, the beginning. This says our assets decreased by 80,000.
Yeah.
So that's going to be 720,000. And our stockholders' equity increased by 100,000. equal 390,000. And so now I'm going to use these two figures to solve for the liabilities. So I'll take my assets, 720, minus my equity of 390,000. Whoops. And that will give me my liabilities of 330,000.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's more easy when I see now in the Excel.
Well, good. If it's more easy now that I showed you, then I did my job.
Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, no, no
I know
problem.
it's easy, but I don't know. I'm stuck over there, and I never go
No, I always say
that
accounting
way.
is like the hardest easy stuff you'll ever do. Like so often when you figure out how to do it, you're like, oh, why didn't I see that? Like it's so the math is always simple math, but knowing how to categorize things, reading the question carefully so that because there's often just a variation of one or two little words in there, that's the hardest part about accounting. When we get to the actual math, it's just, it's just addition and subtraction most of the time.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I learned that now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, brother.
Well, thank you. Are we good? Any more questions?
No.
Just got one.
Okay.
Part 2. If you can have a look at part 2, 101.
Part 2, like the
Homework part 2.
okay. Let me close out of this then. Go back. Week 2, chapter 1, part 2. All right. Which one?
111.
All right.
Now, what stopped me on this one was it says all dollars are in millions.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got all the I've identified the assets and all that. But when I got down to the numbers and I put the numbers in, and this could be just a Wiley thing, I thought maybe it's not with commas, and then I got it wrong, and I put the commas in, I got that wrong, and then I went up to the figures, and like one of the figures was like 13,000, and then did I have to add the millions on the end? And it was really confusing.
Right. Yeah. So again, here's one of those examples of where accounting is like this minute little thing you're supposed to recognize, and that because it says in millions right here, that will express it the same way without the extra zeros on it. Whenever accounting says in millions, it means we're showing this number with 6 zeros taken off of it. If it says in thousands, we're showing this number with three zeros taken off of it. And that's confusing, especially when it's new. So the fact that it says in millions means we're sort of representing it here in the same scale as it's represented up here, where it's also in millions.
So just that first one, would that be 4,100,000 or?
That's actually 4,100,000,000, right? Because what we're saying is this number right here, if we're in millions, that number right there represents 1 million. So this is 4,100 millions, which is 4,100,000,000. I'm sure that clarified it.
Okay, cool.
All it means, if it says this is in millions, then what you would do to find the actual number is you would add 6 zeros.
On the end.
1 million has 6 zeros. Does that make sense more?
Yeah, I did that, and I still got it wrong. So I was like, hang on.
Well, that's because it still wants it represented in millions here. So you're not going to add the zeros here.
Oh, okay. So I just, whatever the figure is there, I just put it there.
Yep. Because it's in millions here and it's in millions here.
Okay, I got it. Just in case I come up with some other curly ones like that.
So do we need to pay attention to commas? I haven't been entering commas.
I don't think Wiley cares if you do commas or not.
Okay, so that's not going to mess up, like if we do add a comma. Like
right, if you just wrote 12 12900 there, it would still be correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That's plenty for one night, right?
I'll throw this in at no extra charge.
Go for it.
I had an English instructor that was every paper I turned in told me that I always marked up. I did not use enough commas. So I submitted an assignment. Now it was a low point. It was only 20 points, but I put a comma behind every single word. And she sent back and she says, okay, maybe not that much. But she didn't dock me for the points either.
Well, she was being nice.
She accepted my humorous.
All right.
I like commas in math much better than in English.
It's more clear where they go, at least. Yeah. Would anybody be willing to offer a closing prayer?
Yeah, well,
All right. Thank you.
our dearest Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for Brother Fox and his love for the students to be able to help and to assist in any way with this course. We're grateful for everything we've learnt today and that we may be able to remember and retain the information that we've learnt so we can apply it to our studies, and pray for all the students who are taking this course that they may be able to watch the videos and to be able to find the help they need. And so grateful for the Spirit that guides us, and pray that the Spirit may continue to be with us. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody. And I will post this in the announcements if you ever want to look back at any part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See y'all later.